because that's what they start off in the keynote. So, Terrance, we'll start with you. Any favorites from the hardware portion of the announcement?
Um, Not really, to be honest. They announced that new 13-inch MacBook Pro with the M2, which is the next gen processor, and the MacBook Air, which lost the wedge look. It looks similar to the MacBook Pros that came out last fall with the M1 Pro and M1 Max. So if you can imagine that gray, um, I guess it'd just be a flat design. A lot of people like the previous generation MacBook Air because it had that little wedge. I'll call it a cheese wedge
A little bit of a slope
design.
to
Yeah, they
it.
got rid of that for the MacBook Air, but that has the M2 chip and it has all the new features, all the faster processor, all of the better lighting, better audio, better graphics processing, all that. So they came out with those two devices, the 13-inch MacBook Pro and a 13-inch MacBook Air, which kind of gives a nice little lineup since you add the 14 and the 16-inch MacBook Pros that came out last fall. That's a nice little lineup for the laptops. I didn't have necessarily a favorite because I'm not running out to buy any of these. But if I did have to say one thing I liked was the price. The entry level price for the MacBook Air starts at about $11.99, and then I think the MacBook Pro starts off at $13.99 or $12.99. I can't remember the actual one.
It's
Okay,
$12.99.
$12.99, which isn't that far off of the MacBook Pro and the MacBook Air of old. So you get new features, you get a more powerful processor at about a couple $100 difference. So the question I would ask people out there is, well, you have options, right? You have the M1 13-inch MacBook Pro out, and you also have now the M2 MacBook Pro and the MacBook Air. The question or charge or problem, good problem to have, is that people that are out on the market right now, what device do you get? Well, if you're out on the market brand new and you want a brand new device, latest and greatest, obviously you're going to get the MacBook Pro with the M2 processors. If you're trying to save a little bit of money, that M1, I would say, if you are budget crunching and budgeting, you're not going to miss out on anything, I guess is what I'm getting to, with the M1 of the old generation. Well, I say old, it's only a couple years old. You won't do any wrong with that. But if you're looking to get stay up to current, the MacBook Pro or the MacBook Air with the M2 processor probably be the one you want to get.
Right. And again, there are some new colors. Of course, they have the standard silver and space gray, but they also have a starlight, which is kind of like a gold, and a midnight, which is looks like a really deep blue. It looks really good.
Right, right.
So
It's
if
not
you
matte black. It's not the same color as the keyboard. If you're
mm,
familiar with the newer keyboards, they have the black keys and the black keyboard background. The new midnight or whatever they're calling it, it's dark, but it's not
yeah,
universal slab like you think of an iPhone. You think of
yeah,
an iPhone, the front end is just all black. You're going to
right,
get a little bit different,
right.
contrast with the different colors.
Right. And one of our listeners, who is also a friend of mine up in DC, she texted me this morning and she was like, I think I'm just going to go ahead and get a MacBook Air because she likes the airline. And she was like, I don't think it's really that big of a difference. I was like, well, if you're trying to upgrade, I was like, I would wait because the M2 is going to give you a big boost from the previous Air versions. And she was like, okay, all right. And so I think she said she's thinking about the starlight color because,
So she
again,
was going to buy what before you
she
told her
was going
about
to buy an Air. She was just going to buy a regular one of the
the
Air
cheese
that's currently
wedge?
out. Yep, yep.
Hmm.
And I was like, if I were you and you're going to spend that kind of money, I would wait until the fall and get the M2 Air. I was like, it is, because she was like, I don't think it's a really big difference. I was like, in processor and performance, it's going to be a big bump, I
Well,
think.
for her, surprisingly, well, I don't know her. I'm not going to put words in her mouth, but the processor and all the specs may not amount to a hill of beans for her. What would be a big difference is the battery life and the quietness. Those old cheese wedge MacBook Airs still have the fans in them. I know because I have two of them in my house right now, especially with my
Mhm.
daughter. Anytime she gets on the computer now, that fan spins up and it's like,
Mm.
if not sounds like it's gonna die, but you can tell it's
You get
showing its
the song.
age.
It's doing something. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
those Macs are old enough to where after, if she, let's just say she went and saved some money and went and got an old one, I'd say after a couple months, that fan would be noticeable for her.
Right.
So, and the battery life, right? These
Yeah.
newer M1, M2 processors, you can get all day battery life without having to worry about plugging it in like you used to, right? So those
Right.
would be the two features that I would suggest to her as to why she would upgrade. All these specs and things, I'm not really a fan. I'll be honest. I'm not really a
Yeah.
fan of all the nits and the MBTUs and the,
Mhm.
I mean, I know what they equate to, I know what it means, but like I don't, when I'm talking to people and they're interested in buying a new computer, I try to give them like real world things
Yeah.
that you should be concerned about. And battery life is one, and not disturbing people when the fan kicks in would be another one.
Yeah, because she does have an older Air, and she's the type of person that kind of holds on to things. She just got a new Apple Watch. I think she may have been on like the third, like Series 3, and
Yeah,
she just upgraded. So she holds on to devices for a bit until, it's either, they're on their last leg, or it's like, it's time for something new. And I told her, I was like, in a few months it'll be out, and I was like, it'll give you the performance boost that, you will probably appreciate. And she was like, okay. And again, those will be available next
next
month.
month.
Yep, yep. So I was like, give it a month. The price isn't bad at all, and it comes in your standard memory, 8 GB up to 16 and 24. Storage typical, starting at 256, goes up to 512 and 1 and 2 TB. So we both just got the new MacBook Pro, the 16-inch in October. So I was like, okay, that's cool. It didn't really kind of turn me either way. I think I like the colors, but other than that, that's pretty much it for me on the phase of the hardware.